My name's Killian Kelly. I'll be head of digital project delivery for John Siskinson, a main contractor in Ireland, and I'll also be the digital construction ambassador with the CIF. And first speaker would like to introduce today would be Rebecca Cicco, Principal Digital Operations, Shercon Director, Digital Node, Global Chair, and Women in BIM. Rebecca, over to you.
Thanks, Cillian, and again, thanks to Ralph and the organisers for the event. So I'm assuming this is my cue to give, I guess, a snippet of my knowledge and my, I guess, background in regard to information management. Effectively, today I will share my screen very quickly and give you, I guess, a little bit of context as to really where I come from when it comes to BIM and information management, and my, I guess, point of view when it comes to the, I guess, the strategy around building skills and knowledge in this space. So thank you very much, Cillian. Thanks again to Ralph and the team at ArcDocs and those that have organised the event. Really appreciate it. I'm currently sitting in Australia. What a wonderful opportunity to attend an event. We have people all over the world listening in, which is just wonderful. So as Cillian introduced, this is, I guess my role is effectively now the lead or the principal for digital enablement at Aurecon. And today, really, I'm going to give you a little bit of insight into really what digital enablement means and what that represents. But for those of you, and I'm sure you've all come across Aurecon hopefully in the past, but effectively Aurecon acquired the business that I managed and ran for many years, both in the UK and globally, Digital Node. And Aurecon obviously are very excited, and I am very excited being part of that business now. I'm also, as Cillian mentioned, the founder and chair of Women in BIM, which isn't just about diversity and growing diversity in construction, but it's very much about addressing the skills shortages that exist. So please get in touch if you're interested. And with that, I'll move into a little bit about me. So effectively, my background is architecture. I had a strong interest in digital very early in my career, and I moved into a variety of different senior roles in architecture before effectively joining the BIM bandwagon, I call it, across the UK. We grew a great community in BIM. I worked very closely with the institutions and standard bodies in the UK over the 10 years I spent in the United Kingdom to effectively support the growth and knowledge of BIM in that region. In that time, the affiliations that I was involved with are listed here, but effectively one of the key drivers for me personally was connecting to industry, learning from others, and effectively growing knowledge in the BIM space, not only in relation to the UK BIM policy, but also on a global front. And very much in the last 5 years, much of the work that I've undertaken in BIM and information management has effectively been a global initiative. So when it comes to our philosophy on digital transformation, I'd really like to give you some insight into why it's important for us as a business, and also to offer insight into other businesses as to the importance of digital transformation. And for us, really, it's about ensuring that we can remain sustainable, we can continue to grow, to be profitable, and to ensure that we are digital in essence. And that digital, I guess, capability and growth in our business very much is powered by not only information management, but also the technologies that are fueling that information management process. We effectively digitally transform our clients by looking at all aspects of their business, and I'll give you a little bit of insight to that in a second. We work closely to ensure effectively that our clients understand the importance of information management in line with BIM and digital engineering, which effectively is underpinned by industry standards. So this is very much an important part of the work I do, not only within Aurecon, but also across the Women in BIM network and other groups I'm involved with. We effectively believe this is important for our business because obviously 19650, we all know, very important for industry. For those of you who are outside of the UK, you might know some of the challenges that we're currently facing in the adoption of 19650. We're very lucky effectively in the UK that there was such a strong, keen adoption of standards, and very much that is a cultural link, I think, back to the way that we work in the UK. But very much we support our clients in ensuring they align their information management processes consistently to industry standards, and understanding essentially the value of the digital asset and what that means, alongside the, I guess, the development of information management frameworks, which support for us wider global issues that relate to sustainability, to carbon, and effectively to enabling smarter cities. So it's not just about buildings and infrastructure for us, it's very much about aligning to sustainability goals globally, which is very important was important to Digital Node, still is very important to me personally, and is I guess forms the foundation for Oricon as a business and this area of the business. And I guess, you know, the node or digital node has now become digital enablement for those of you who I guess really want to understand what we're doing now. We are working with clients to highlight the value or the importance of data, to effectively help them specify their data, to ensure that their data is effectively accurate, fit for purpose, it's compliant, and also that the quality of that data is fit for purpose. And, you know, this relates to not only obviously the geometrical information we're building, but also that non-geometrical data, which we're obviously supporting our clients in specifying and effectively building our team's knowledge in specifying those requirements. So typically, when we look at BIM, we also support, I guess, the wider digital construction landscape. And across Australasia, effectively, digital engineering is quite a common term, where it looks at the wider digital landscape for infrastructure and the built environment. Our typical projects would effectively focus on supporting clients in their operational outcomes. So a typical engagement for us would effectively be reviewing a business strategy, looking at how that business, if it is an asset owner or an organisation, at how they procure, deliver and manage their assets. And that's very important because for us, we realistically, I guess, break apart the way that a structured process can be delivered to our clients to deliver value. It is about obviously reviewing the way that information is delivered in an existing fashion, reviewing that the information obviously that is delivered in an existing way can be, I guess, molded or reviewed or actually built and changed according to what the client requires, and then defining for them a strategy around how they can effectively be more digital in the way that they define information. And then we also support the delivery of that information to ensure that obviously the framework is in compliance with ISO 19650, but also that there is an understanding essentially around the requirements for 19650. So for us, it's not just about those frameworks and the strategy around those frameworks, but effectively it's also about supporting digital delivery, understanding the different roles and functions that need to exist on a project to be able to effectively have success. So looking at not only project delivery, but also asset management, you know, how obviously we would work with clients to, again, review their existing asset management policies, some of the data requirements they may have, if they have any, and then effectively helping them to build skills and requirements for some of these functions commonly known as roles across the world to support delivery of BIM and an information management process. We also have a strong interest, and for those of you who know me and who know the work that we've done over the years, it is very much kind of fueled in building skills, so education and training. And much of the work we do also is coupled with some of these kind of building education and skills building with our clients and with the teams that we work with, looking at the importance of consistent delivery, the importance of consistent terminologies, of implementation of 19650 to support BIM delivery. And that is a very crucial component to the work that we do and some of the, obviously, the projects that we work on. So for us, you know, from our experience and our project learnings, what does success look like to our clients? And for us, it's about firstly, again, looking at clearly defining why it is important to, I guess, effectively change the way that they are delivering projects. Looking at organisational wide objectives, clearly mapping some of the objectives against clear benefits rather. And also looking at obviously the digital processes and how that can effectively support project delivery while also fueling and supporting the growing of capability and capacity in digital literacy, which includes management on a strategic level at a very high level, but also on a project, on a practical level, you know, supporting teams in delivering that information in obviously an accurate way. So our mission really, and personally, to be completely frank, I think it's such a strong desire of mine to help clients drive efficiencies. I've always been very passionate about the way that I guess delivering projects consistently, fueling those projects through the use of technology will allow for greater benefits across digital solutions. And finally, we know that, and Elaine pointed out so beautifully that emerging technologies are constantly evolving. There are these differentiators really that exist across industry, which will allow us to change and mold as businesses. And for us, not again just personally within the work that I do, but again as a business within Oricon, we constantly keep up to speed with those technologies to ensure that the way we work and the way that we effectively give advice to our clients keeps up to speed with that. So that is really a business strategy for us. So thank you. That was a really quick, short, sharp presentation from me, 10 minutes, but I hope that you gained some value and insight into that brief discussion. So thank you, Cillian. Here are my details if you'd like to get in touch.
Thanks very much, Rebecca. Much appreciated now. That's brilliant. And up next, we have Gavin Crump, founder and BIM consultant for the BIM Guru. You there, Gavin?
You're on mute, Gavin.
I'm on mute, classic work from home mistake. So thanks for having me on board. Today I'm talking about information management and strategic planning, but I'm going to go a little bit left field because most people who probably know me know I like to think a little bit outside the box. So I'd like to thank, of course, the BIM Coordinator Summit team, ArcDocs and Ralph and his hardworking team. It's amazing just seeing so many people in one place that are passionate about what we care about as well, which is really exciting. I'd like to thank my all the presenters and the panelists and the moderator, and of course all of you for coming. So if you haven't met me before, you might know me from some various avenues that I work through, but I have an architectural background as well. Worked in the Australian AEC industry for about 10 years now, mostly delivering and focusing on project delivery using the platform of Revit, but sort of going beyond it in my recent years. And I have a fairly strong background in BIM management in architectural firms of varying sizes, but I did switch over to the model of BIM consulting almost 2 years ago now, which was a great change. So I sort of split my time in two avenues. Some of you might know my business, BIM Guru, where I work as a sole trader, servicing companies between 1 person up to 400 people. So a pretty broad range of coverage. I do get a lot of really interesting opportunities as a consultant. If you're a BIM manager out there, I do recommend considering consulting as a long-term career path. It's very interesting. And I also, in my spare time, make videos on YouTube as the Aussie BIM Guru. So I sort of call it my play per se. I'm mostly focusing today on just talking about the how of information management. It's really what I care about the most. I'm very passionate about software, about how process ties into practice. So I am going to go a little bit outside the process window, even though I do value that it's highly important in making things work. You can't just deliver a project on software alone. But there's a little bit of left field thinking, so just a warning. But I guess as a consultant, I find one of the most valuable things when I engage any client is to think about perspective. How are they looking at their problem? How are they looking at their challenges? And often we have to reframe the perspective of where they think they are, or even where they need to be. So often, a lot of people think they're at the top of the mountain when they're probably not even standing on the right mountain. Often it takes a whole new way of thinking to embrace the way that projects demand that they work these days, or to get ahead of the competition and actually deliver things in new and innovative ways. I find in my consulting, the main services that I provide that really relate to information management actually tend to be strategic and also educative. So I'm finding that I'm often trying to plan for people, set out strategies that will work in the longer term, whether it be actually designing an internal data schema or how they can embrace an external data schema, or also just educating them on what's actually out there. Often people just come to me asking questions. I think it's really important for businesses in our industry to make sure they're always maintaining momentum. One of the biggest risks an industry has, a business in our industry has, is to slow down, to stick with a workflow they've used just because it works right now, because as we know, the industry does sort of move when we're not looking at it sometimes. Even though we think it's slow, it's faster than we think. So I find that there's a lot of components that come together to make information management work. Obviously, the company's culture is huge. The clients obviously have to share the vision. They want to have managed information in the first place. Often a lot of clients don't actually understand the value of their own information, so that's often a very important step. Of course, the information managers, who's actually facilitating the process and who's actually doing the work as well. How does it all come together? All four of those things really I find are crucial. Without any one of those parties involved, it just doesn't work. There's definitely a lot of ignorance in the industry right now. I would say that, the open standards have been brilliant in making people more aware that change is coming, change is expected, and change is here. So like I said, the industry does look like it moves slow, but when it does move, it can change overnight. Sometimes there are things that you might not be aware of that have been developed for years and suddenly they're here. So always keep an eye out for signs of change and try to be ahead of the curve is usually my recommendation for most clients. Don't just follow what your competition is doing because they might not be doing the right thing. Look at the bigger picture. Make sure that you are actually following, the right trajectory. I think it's important to be genuine with clients. That's one of the things I've learned in consulting. It's often better to tell them what they actually want to hear rather than what you think they need to hear. And we're getting to a point where our clients are sophisticated. They actually are starting to understand when they're being bin-washed. So I think the time is changing, and it's a little bit harder to bin-wash our clients now, and I think it always should be. So if you are in a company and you're limiting yourself by a platform, for example, it might be harder for you in future. So the reality that a lot of people talk about isn't always the same for everyone. Every country in the world is at a very different stage of BIM adoption. There are different types of clients, different types of projects, different types of companies. There are some challenges I do see clients, not really my clients, but people that talk to me about their firms encountering, because I guess through my YouTube, I have developed a really strong network with people all around the world. So I find that we are still very focused on projects, and often a strategy needs to go beyond just a project, because from that you form a process that can deliver on multiple projects, and then people can work flexibly in the company. There's all sorts of benefits that come from that. I find too, if you limit yourself by the platforms available to you, often this will actually limit your ability as an information manager as well. It's better to seek out as many types of platforms as you need, and also to do constant research. And I do notice as well that there's a lot of turnover problems in the industry at the information management level, which is usually just because there's a lot of people frustrated and they're looking for the right company. But I do remind you there are different ways of working out there, consulting just being one of them. But it's not all bad news. I don't want to be negative. I just want to be realistic. We're also in a really amazing time of change. So if you're not necessarily aware of some of these paradigms I've listed below, they are very much happening right now. Most people know I'm very passionate about automation. I really like using scripting programs to actually capture process in an actual tool, not just relying on people to follow written instructions. I really enjoy when you can actually capture something like that. I find that the idea of driving everything from experience is slowly transitioning to some degree towards driving using data, so capturing experience in a computer readable format. That's quite exciting to me as well. Obviously, experience is still highly valuable. We can't afford to lose the knowledge of people out there, which is actually a big risk for the industry. I think that the data is becoming more informed. People are understanding how to actually collect data in more sophisticated ways than they might have, say, 10 years ago, which is really informing how we can use our data now. And of course, everyone knows we're going to a more open thinking in terms of standards and the way our software works. I always encourage people to seek the walk. The talk is important. We do need to talk about process. We do need to actually create debates around this to make sure that we're all moving in the right direction, but do make sure that you also are putting it into practice. I do meet people that occasionally don't actually go and see their workflows through. They write them on paper and then they send them off into the office and it morphs into something completely different. So just a few tips there, just about how you can, I guess, make sure that you're staying ahead of the curve and actually putting ideas into practice beyond just process, but also at the same time too, taking back that practice outcome into process so that we actually move forward. I always encourage people to share. So one thing the industry wasn't necessarily that good at until recently was actually sharing things outside the walls of companies. Through launching my YouTube channel and opening my own business, I got the unique opportunity to start sharing process with people, creating tutorials, videos, ways to do things. So putting the practice and the process together. So if you can find ways to do this without obviously getting sued by your company, I do encourage you to find those avenues. Information's hard to manage. It's a little bit like connecting services across, entire continents. There's so many parties involved, and you need everyone to be on board actually delivering the process for it to reach the end. Because at the end of that pipeline, you've got a client waiting and hoping that they'll get what I guess they paid for. So that every party is involved in the process, and I think that's always really important to understand when you're designing a process, to actually holistically think about everyone that's involved with managing that. Of course, a lot of people don't think they're information managers. I do encounter people that don't realise that they actually do have a fairly big part to play in the process. So pretty much anyone, I think, falls under my description of who I think an information manager is. So I think it's really important just to recognise that even if you're not an author in a BIM platform, you still, through process, actually influence information management quite heavily. So we're all responsible for it, in my opinion, and I think that information needs to be good, which is a very subjective term. So I guess I'll just share what I think good information is through my experience with managing it. I guess what we're seeing is that good information is needed. We've seen things like EIRs or employer information requirements that are actually dictating what the client actually needs on the project, rather than just assuming that the company's internal standards will suit their needs. I think this is one of the best changes that I've seen in terms of how information is to be delivered, at least in recent time. Good information has to be reliable, because often we're just dealing with databases. So a door doesn't have to be a door if you can't see it. Databases can lie. So there's a really strong need emerging for auditing your data as well. I'm seeing a lot of companies really focusing on this as a very current paradigm. As well as this, we know all the problems that come with moving data between programs, especially when they're closed in nature, because obviously the big software giants don't like when you move your files to other people's programs that they're not getting paid for. So as a result, we often do lose a lot of data. So we are seeing an importance emerge in just not even IFC, but just data in general. How do you preserve it? Do you send it through the web? I'm seeing this becoming more and more important day by day. So people are starting to not limit their ability to transfer data just based on the programs they use. As well as this, planning is so crucial. I really like the Plannerly platform as an example of how you can involve people in the process of information management without necessarily forcing them to have to be inside the authoring platforms. They can still dictate a lot that relates quite closely to how information is actually put together in still a very visual and connected environment. And I think that connectivity is really necessary for a team on any complex project. And of course, we're seeing information being accessible as being a big thing as well. So for example, BIMTrack is a great example of a platform where you can bring lots of different programs together and they can all still talk the same language of information with each other. I always encourage people to think outside the box. I really probably only truly started going outside the box, I would say, about halfway through my career. My first half of my career, I probably let the industry dictate to me where I should go, and then just decided one day that I wanted to start exploring using new software, engaging with different types of people, and it really changes your career and your abilities. When you're free of software's limitations, it can be a really amazing thing for your career. As well as Gavin. Sure. As well as this being proactive or reactive, I think is important in our industry. So make sure that you're ahead of the trends. This involves a lot of research as well. And of course, if companies are making money, don't expect them to change is something I keep reminding people. Because I guess as Autodesk themselves say, don't wait for progress, design it, build it. I encourage people to create things, invent, innovate. Don't limit yourself by the software that's available to you. Design it. You can wait for things to come unstuck or you can walk past it. Just a few platforms buried in this word map here, but these are examples of platforms I'm watching, concepts that I'm already aware of or using. But the point is there's a lot out there, and this is just a very small snapshot of platforms, processes, standards that are out there. I think it's important to question narrative as well to make sure that you're being genuine in what you deliver to your audience as well. I do see a lot of people questioning if software is BIM, and sure, it's not, it's process, but to devalue it, I feel doesn't necessarily contribute to a narrative that we need right now. It's good to question process. I pretty much always include this GIF in every presentation I do because I'm sure we can all relate to it, and we know that we need to be better. So think like an architect, actually architect as the verb to compute. I find that an interesting intersection of semantics. So this might be how your day feels right now. But if you go outside the box and you think about different techniques you can use to information manage and use different platforms, your day might start feeling a little bit more like this. got to say, this is how my day feels now, and I really hope that everyone in future gets to a point through either software, process, or people where they can feel like this as well. So come join the club. We're always looking for people. So we're all heroes, but there's room for more. And I like to finish on this one just saying that, you know, time moves quickly. So also keep an eye out for the next generation, because ultimately some people build our present right now. These kids are going to build our future, and it's probably our job to guide them. Most of the people here are probably around about that age where we're going to be guiding the next generation into this industry. So I guess that's the end. There's a few communities there I've just put as an example of places we collaborate on new and innovative things in the industry. But I always like to finish on a quote. So I thought this one by Robert Downey Jr. was quite fitting with the narrative of being a hero. But it involves doing. You have to be active. You have to be involved. So thanks for listening to my quick 10-minute presentation. And I look forward to seeing more.
Thanks very much, Gavin. It was really good. Thank you very much. Now, next up we have George Mokhtar, Director, Technology Business Lead, Turner and Townsend. Thanks, George.
Thank you very much. Let us know when you can see the slides, please, if you don't mind.
Yeah, if you just want to go into presenter mode.
Sure. Okay, cool. I'll get straight into it. So today I thought I'd talk about the concept of value. So when we talk about strategic consultancy and how it manifests itself, I think it's really important to understand the difference between what you'd traditionally regard as value and what's going on in the industry right now. So there were three things that I wanted to talk about just to set the context at a very high level. Number one, the concept of value is changing. The concept of performance and the way that people measure performance is changing as well. So we are currently in an environment where clients are expecting different things, and a move away from your traditional time, cost, and quality has never been more prevalent. Number two, great to see these already turn up in some of the presentations so far. The Sustainable Development Goals, which are disrupting everything globally at the moment, are really the key thing that's driving governments in their decision making, but also the key thing that's defining how clients approach digital and what their strategies look like. The things that have happened in the last 2 or 3 years, you've got about pandemics, you've got carbon. They are fundamentally disrupting the built environment and what that needs to do in future. There has never been more need to change the way that we do business, the way that we operate, and our focus on the outcomes than there is now. And the third thing that I wanted to use to set the tone is actually the future is already here. It's just not evenly distributed. So this is a quote from William Gibson. Basically, if you look at what's going on across the world, we already have achieved a lot of what we need to achieve. It's just in pockets of excellence. And it's important that us as a community of information managers, strategic consultants, construction professionals, whatever your role is, it's really important that you make sure somebody else's case study becomes your business case, and we don't let the industry falter by working in silos. So in the context of this, what is our response? And I just wanted to give you a kind of a brief overview as to what this might look like from a strategic consultancy perspective and how this might manifest itself day to day. So the perspective that I have is I manage and oversee the technology division in Turner and Townsend UK. There are more than 100 of us who basically focus on anything from day-to-day hands-on technical analysis, analytics, supporting clients with the good work that they need to do to deliver major projects and programs. But we also work at governmental, strategic, corporate level as well, helping people really understand how they respond to what's going on in the market and work out what the route map is from where they are to where they need to get to make sure that their business is performing in the right way. And as I said before, that has changed. It's not necessarily just about finance and commercials now. There are big strategic objectives, standout objectives, which are fundamentally transforming the way that people need to deliver projects. I think BIM previously was something that was a bit of a Trojan horse in our industry. It's helped us to become more digitally literate. It's helped us to focus on efficiency, productivity. And now really it should be the Trojan horse, or it should be the process that helps us really understand how to do the right things for the places that we sort of live, work and play in. So what do you do about it? I mean, our response is to develop a framework, a structural framework of things that help people to understand their maturity, help people navigate through where the best return on investment for their business will be, whether that's financial or their route to net zero or whatever it is. So our approach was to develop this 2x3x3 model, which essentially lays all that out and allows us to pull the big complex problem to pieces essentially and focus on the right areas. So what's really important here is that this is half about the human element and half about the machine element. And digital and technology and creating the metaverse and everything else is not necessarily just about tech and data. It's largely about experience within the workplace and within the built environment. So that also includes soft skills such as sort of thematic analysis, engagement, stakeholder engagement, working out where an organization is and where they need to get to, understanding the perceptions at every different level, and helping really articulate what that route map looks like. Once you have this structure in place, you can understand first of all at the top, so you've got number one, all of the key areas of the cog that I just shown. Number two, where are you now? So it might be that you are at low level of capability in some areas and high in others. Number three, where do you want to get to? And number four, what is the delta? What is the difference that you need to focus on to get there? And so what we're starting to see is development of these archetypes, which really help profile different organizations and different programs so that we can really help rapidly resolve some of the issues they've got. And this includes looking at the BIM process. That's more of an output of the wider digital thread, but this also includes the upper end business architecture, information architecture, flow of information. And this is where I think Alain's point before about all of the information management working together and having to be interoperable is so important. It's not just about one thing, and it's not just about the tech. So right now, because the market's moving so rapidly, there's a move to modern methods of construction, there's a route to net zero, you've got everything that's happening around productivity, pandemic, change of workplace. Really, the challenge is getting clients to understand how to respond and how to be agile. And it's all about performance. So a lot of the people that we work with are kind of wondering, how do I stop myself from becoming irrelevant? And really, it's about three things. And you can look at these later if you like, but our approach is to go assess, adapt and advance, help people understand clear objectives, what their strategy looks like, help them implement it, make those key interventions. And this might be anything from EIRs, digital backbone, new systems, business change. And then actually, ultimately, the most important thing, which is the difference usually between an investment for success or an investment which ends up just spending money, is actually working out what the cultures and behaviours look like, building those habits, building those routines, make sure that it's being measured and realising the benefits and the outcomes that people are really trying to achieve. So you'll see this day to day from the BIM process. People will be asking you, how do we get a more robust design? How do we reduce contingency sums? How do we reduce variations on site? In future, it's how do we reduce, how do we increase the job rate for this part of the UK? How do we reduce the suicide rate? How do we make sure that there's generally more well-being? How do we take an hour out of everybody's day? How do we use digital twins and the interconnected system of systems to make sure that we've got better water, utilities, transport, etc., so that we can sort of use a more modern approach?
Sorry, just if we've 2 minutes left, if you can.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah. So that's what it looks like and how to approach it. What we also think is really critical is horizon scanning. So making sure that you're not only looking to change the businesses and the organizations that you work with, but you're also trying to share and collaborate across industry to work out what's coming next and how do they prepare for it. And this route map is really important for success, particularly when the market's moving as fast as it is. So I'll very quickly show you what this might look like on a project. So it's all about getting the setup right, mobilization, EIRs. In the design stage, it's all about governance and assurance, as the last presenter mentioned just now. In the construction stage, it's all about robustness of delivery, handing over the O&Ms and all this good stuff that BIM helps us create. And in handover mode, we're talking about really, first of all, handing over information they could trust, but also supporting the next generation of the tools and systems that will operate portfolios more effectively. And in future, this enables more and more insight, the move from hindsight to foresight to insight. and also looking at things like edge computing to help us inform the IoT process and work out what we can do with AI. Now, this is happening in some places, but I said at the start, the future is actually here, but it's not necessarily distributed evenly at the moment. So I'll just very quickly finish on this. These are the three things that we can see driving substantial change in the industry, and these are the three things that are impacting. So number one, sustainability. That is the destination everyone's trying to get to. It's the route to net zero, it's circular economy, it's materials passports, it's societal benefits and outcomes. These are the key drivers that are fundamentally transforming projects, particularly projects that are already being built. And a quick quote on this one, less than 1% of the buildings currently being constructed in the UK actually meet the future requirements for our sustainable future set out by the government. There is a huge difference and a disruptive change coming as to what we are doing in this space. And I think the COP process that you'll see over the next few weeks should be very exciting and interesting to see what we do with that. So that's the destination. The vehicle to get there is productivity. How do we become leaner? How do we use modern methods of construction, design for manufacture? How do we take the fat out and reduce the process, taking out all that sediment that's built up over years and years of traditional delivery? And digitalization for me is actually the piece that supports that and underpins it. So this is the piece that enables the transformation, and without it, I can't see a way for us to help become a more productive society in the built environment and to ultimately achieve the goals that are necessary for us to improve the experience of the people who live, work and play in the assets we build and the cities and infrastructure that we use and live in. Okay, that's me done. I'm on time. Thanks very much for listening to my presentation and look forward to the panel discussion in a second.
Brilliant, George. Thanks very much. Thank you. That was great. So what we have now, we just have a couple of I suppose, questions that was put forward from the audience, and then some questions we'd have as an open discussion. So we'll start with a question for yourself, Rebecca, that was posted from one of the attendees. So when you talk about the internet of buildings, how does the security work? How does the security of that work? How can you guarantee that the information is secure and accessible to the people who shouldn't have access to it?
£5 in the pot, Rebecca, you're on mute.
You're just on mute.
Apologies. I was just saying that I don't think I referenced that terminology in my presentation, but certainly when it comes to setting the security framework, I guess in regard to a built project, either being infrastructure, building, utilities, regardless of that built project, it's really important to, again, assess the organizational needs for the security of that information. And that includes reviewing, I guess, the types of information that exist and how that information can be managed and protected. And again, because I'm I guess, fascinated and obsessed with the 19650 suite. For me, it's about ensuring that there's an understanding of process and setting a security framework for a project. We talk about security requirements for clients in a number of different ways, depending on the client at hand. So, very much about reviewing the security risks to start with, mapping those security risks, and then effectively developing a strategy as to how they can be achieved. And, for me, it's not about the technology, it's really about the process, ensuring that the right people have the right access to that information, ensure that there is a process of protecting that data, and that obviously that data is protected at all times, regardless of the stage of the project, and then effectively, obviously, ensuring that that is continually managed, through the life cycle of the asset. So security is a big topic. I could keep talking about it, but again, for those of you who haven't had visibility of of 19650 Part 5, I'd encourage you to have a read and very much understand some of those requirements really embedded in that document.
Brilliant. Thanks very much, Rebecca. And I suppose Gavin or George, was there anything you'd like to add to that question?
I can add a little bit if that's all right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really cool. So we did there's two sides of it. There's the information security side and then the physical. So we did quite an interesting piece of work with CPNI a couple of years ago, looking at how to integrate the cyber and the physical security process into the model assurance process. And it's pretty cool because you can essentially look at the CPNI way rule sets and you can analyze models for security. So BIM's actually really good. It's basically like design coordination, but early doors analysis for anything to do with anti-terror, counter eavesdropping, things like that. Quite exciting. So it's basically, as Rebecca said, it's all about getting the data robust and understood and the requirements understood to start off with. But beyond that, the concept of analysing geometry and interdependencies in assets is awesome, and security is just one of those benefits. Some of the other things we've touched on today are, equally as important and useful. You're on mute.
No.
From yourself, Gavin, is there anything else you'd like to add? Sure, we can go to the next question if you want, and we'll get the mute sorted out in a second. Or you're there now, Gavin.
Oh, okay, sure. There might be a delay,
Yep.
maybe.
Yeah, you're okay.
Okay, great. I was just going to say people is really so critical to security as well, making sure people are trained in process, because you can design the best system in the world and all you need is one person to make a mistake and it can bring the whole thing undone. So, the classic problem exists between keyboard and user. You can only use software so far. It comes down to managing people and how they interact and how they're educated as well.
Great point. Good. Okay, well, the next question we'd like to ask, so we'd like to touch on the evolving needs of the digital processes and how they dovetail to the maturity assessments and capabilities of the supply chain. So, George, I'll put this question to yourself.
It's really interesting, isn't it? I mentioned it at the start of the project. Everyone's focus is on time, cost, and quality, particularly in the sort of large infrastructure space. The ability to influence some of these other major outcomes is growing more and more. But we're now actually starting to see in the sort of real estate sector, whether it's people who manage and maintain global portfolios, they have to comply with sort of various different requirements in different parts of the world, whether it be net zero, whether it be something else. And we're starting to see those become equally weighted when it comes to strategic decisions at board level. So previously in a boardroom, it's what is the ROI, what return on investment are we going to get financially, when we will see that, what's the yield, what's the risk, what's the reputational damage. And that's very much moving into what are the strategic outcomes that we can do. And what's interesting for me is, the biggest one's obviously decarbonisation of the built environment. We had a big conference a couple of years ago. The World Economic Forum reported on it quite a lot. So the basically CEOs at Davos are all currently competing on ambition, and they're all saying, yeah, we're going to be net zero by 2030. We'll be by 2035. Countries are following the same thing. So we're actually just seeing an almost instant and rapid change in what's important. And that really fundamentally changes how contracts are set up, what the concept of value is, how people actually perform, what the processes are that are important and which aren't. All of a sudden, there are more important things than money, which is quite an interesting concept in a capital delivery in a capitalist world, So, for me, the exciting part is we are seeing significant change, and it's for me a huge opportunity to bring people into our industry who've got interests that lie beyond finance. And that's how you get the best talent. So yeah, so exciting times, really.
Brilliant. And I suppose then, Gavin, the next question. So in your opinion, who is the key role to be appointed to lead and manage the digital strategy along with validating the data requirements?
It's a tricky one. I wish it was the client sometimes, because that'd be the easiest way to make sure they get what they want. But I guess most of the time, in my experience, it tends to be the architect, just because they tend to have the most reach through all the disciplines in terms of coordinating and communicating with everyone. I've been on many jobs where the lead or head contractor has been engaged early in like an IPD or ECI style model, and I do find that can be a very successful model because you do realise the BIM goals beyond just the handover to tender for construction. So I'd like to think on large infrastructure-driven projects, an early engaged builder would be my preference, just because they will see the project through regardless, hopefully. And I guess in absence of that, I do find that architects often do have a good ability just because they are natural communicators. They're used to connecting a lot of people together to coordinate a project. But I've also seen often the mechanical engineer can be a fairly effective point of contact because they often have a lot of play in the asset management and identification process as well. A lot of the time that the services assets have a lot of construction and procurement related to them. So often architects can't necessarily understand those systems as deeply as they could. So I guess it comes down to the project is sort of my point. But of all of those, I've seen success on projects depending.
Oh, good point. Good point. Look, it's an interesting take on it. And look, we'll have one last question, I suppose, with Rebecca. So, as part of the strategic project planning on information management, what are the key requirements to a successful digital strategy?
I'm going to touch on a couple of points that the panelists have made, I think, because it's really important to tie in some of those concepts. And firstly, we talk about digital capabilities and the capabilities of a team to inform a project. Effectively, information management does not exist unless we have the right people and the right organizations effectively delivering what they're supposed to be delivering. And we talk about information management in the context of industry standards because that's all we can go by, right? So that's what we have there. But effectively, in the UK, again, and I reiterate the fact that we are very fortunate in the UK that we are underpinned by policy. We are underpinned by the UK BIM framework, and that framework sets up very clear definitions for who is to define the information management process, who is to define the digital strategy, as well as validating the data requirements, and who is to obviously manage the capabilities. So it really depends on where the initiative is coming from. So as an organization who manages assets, or if you're a delivery team or a task team delivering that information, you really need to understand what the client / the appointing party is asking for. So clarity on information requirements, which is where I think George touched on it, as well as some of the information that Gavin touched on as well, with having the right information presented as early as possible allows for that project's success. And we talk about intelligent clients and intelligent processes, but effectively internally within a project or within an organization, the strategy for that business should really be set strategically, and then obviously reviewing the requirements in detail to inform the that strategy. So again, I try to remove opinion-based responses. I look at industry standards for guidance, and that's how I very much inform our clients in formulating their responses to information management and the strategy around it.
Brilliant, Rebecca. I suppose Gavin and George, is there anything you'd like to add on that question?
Around who should do it?
Yeah, so really, what are the key requirements for a successful digital strategy?
The key requirements, I mean, apart from echoing what's just been said, set the conditions for success essentially. So do you have a clear and robust strategy? Do you have objective key results which are set out, so OKRs worth looking into? Are you monitoring and measuring, and are people accountable and actually know what they're doing? Once you've got all that, it enables you to bring people together and collaborate. And the piece around that is actually the people side of building relationships, building trust, getting people to bring in all of their sort of lessons learned and experience from elsewhere, and trying to move people away from a fixed mindset of getting in the room and saying, I'm the expert, and moving them into a growth mindset where they get in the room and say, I'd rather be a learn-it-all than a know-it-all, to quote Satya Nadella. So that's the big thing for me, is laying the foundations and getting the right behaviours on top of it, making sure the kids are playing together, basically.
Brilliant, George. And I suppose, Gavin, to finish up with yourself, anything to add?
Yeah, no, very well put. I like the learn it all, know it all. That's a great analogy. Yeah. But I guess clarity. That seems to be one thing that we really do need on projects. Everyone needs to be on the same page and understand what everyone's actually talking about when we go in those meetings and talk about these complex processes. And I have been in many meetings where I'm sure people haven't understood what's being said and they don't put their hand up. We just need to communicate openly and make sure that we're all working together on common goals, I guess. Yeah. But no, great points, everyone. Agree.
Right.
That's great. Okay, well, Ralph, I think that's been all the questions that I covered for this side. We'll move into the next slot of speakers. I'd like to thank everyone for joining. So thanks, Gavin, thanks, Rebecca, and thanks, George. Brilliant presentations. Thanks very much.
Thank you.